So I'd spent a decent amount of time on these videos talking about my views of social media, and that probably they're net negative, right? Social media's value is probably net negative, meaning that there's certainly positives to it, but overall I feel like the bad outweighs the good. So with that said, I recently joined, I guess, Twitter. For maybe not the first time, I'd probably been on there before, but in this vein, like in relation to these videos that I'm making. And as you might expect, I was a little bit conflicted on that because I feel like social media is not the greatest of tools. So perhaps a little bit hypocritical or contradictory to go on there. But also, as I started to look around and read some things a little deeper than I historically have, because I haven't really used Twitter much in the past, you start to recognize and see some of those flaws. You see the volume of people metaphorically shouting. You see the number of views and viewpoints and insights and hot takes on there. And you also see the limitations, right? The difficulty in getting into complex, nuanced topics because you're limited in the amount of characters you can write, and the ability to write long form isn't really there. So, I was hesitant in terms of if I was gonna do it, and if I should do it, and what the value might be. But as I've said in the past, I do think part of the reason I'm making these videos is part of it's certainly to try and better myself. It's a way to do self-reflection and try and make myself more aware, challenge my thoughts. And I find for me, putting it down on a video or whatever it might be forces me to do that more than if I just keep it in my own head. So I think personally I'm getting benefit from the videos. But another thing or reason for the videos, and something that I want to do, is get more external. I want to have more conversations with other people with differing views and strong views, and in some ways test what I'm working on here, test to see if some of the theories and the concepts that I believe help to think better, be better, drive empathy, help facilitate dialogue and conversation more rather than divisiveness. I want to test some of those things out. And if I'm being super honest and perhaps a little bit believing some of my own hype to an extent, I think there's some value I can provide. I think maybe there's some value I could put out in the world. And I want to test that and see if that's the case. So Twitter is a way to do that. Maybe one of the more direct ways to start to interact with people, right? Because there's lots of people on there talking. So I kind of weighed the pros and cons and said, hey, let's give it a shot. There's not a lot of risk in it. If I acknowledge up front, I recognize the potential hypocrisy of it, and I'm going to see if there's value in it. I'm going to see if there's a way to do it. Let's check it out. So I make this video kind of an hour or two after an hour or two session of kind of being on Twitter, and I followed a wide array of people and starting to engage a little bit for an hour or two, just to kind of give my reflections and thoughts on it. And I'd say there's a few thoughts that come to mind from it. One, most simply, is that the addictive nature of it I see obviously right away, right? As soon as you start posting, there's almost a compulsion to see, or in my case, I was more responding to other people's posts. I didn't actually make any, unique or original posts myself. But as soon as you do that, you find yourself looking to see if somebody responded or what they might have said or how it's going over. Even as I'm very cognizant of the fact that that shouldn't matter that much, and I don't want that to dictate how I post or what I do. But there's a natural inclination for that you almost have to be actively monitoring. And it also, I guess, for lack of a better word, there's a sense of power maybe that comes with it. Not like extreme power by any means, but you start making some comments, people start responding, and maybe in some cases they like them. And again, almost natural human instinct starts to feel like, oh, wow, like I'm good at this, or I'm onto something. And again, it's an hour or two into it, and you get maybe a handful at best of those types of things, and who they're coming from, you don't even know. So it's funny and interesting to think about how active you need to be mentally, if you're going to be on there, to try and avoid the things that make it what I would say net negative, and try and avoid those pitfalls. So be interesting to see how that plays out over time, but I see the risks in it right away. I also see, as a potential downside or something to be aware of, how easy it is to, for lack of a better phrase, criticize other people, right? You go on there and you see people posting and sharing views, and in many cases you assume some people are doing it in an exaggerated way for effect, because they want to get retweets, they want to get likes, they want to get followers. And in some cases, it might be a combination of that, and they just don't think very much before they post, or it's very emotional, they're very emotionally charged. So it's almost like ripe hunting grounds, if you will, if you wanted to just go out and judge people for not thinking logically and rationally. Again, something you have to be very aware of, because who am I to say that these people aren't being rational or logical? Maybe their views, it's real to them, and maybe they know better than I do. But B, even if I did, feel strongly that they weren't, what benefit am I bringing just to kind of call that out, and just, if it were to be insulting people or trying to shame them in some way, right? Those are the things I hate about social media. So, that inclination, again, that natural human desire is almost there right away to start to do that. And I kind of found myself, as I was writing the first few replies and tweets and things like that, having to stop myself from that. And I think even my base level wasn't that bad, but still, it was a little bit too far. So what I tried to tell myself is, at least initially, everything I post as a reply to other people's posts, I'm going to do it as a question, a genuine question. And I probably overdid it, but I use that phrase almost always. Like, I'm genuinely curious, or I genuinely want to know, X, Y, or Z. Why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? Why do you think this? Why do you think that? Because it is, the positive of it is it can be an amazing learning tool. It's an amazing ability to scale learning and getting other people's views and opinions, assuming they respond. So if somebody posted an extreme view, if somebody posted or retweeted something, I might ask, like, hey, why'd you share that? What was your thought? What was your objective? Do you feel like you're hitting it? One of the things I posted a few times was different politicians that went out of their way to kind of attack or insult their opponent. And in most cases, in this, it was a Democrat in this scenario. And my point was genuine and curious, because almost always they kind of had Trump's name in there as part of their attack. And my question was, for example, like, do you really think that attacking your opponent on Twitter is the best way to show people that you're better than Trump, or people that, kind of support him or follow him? Genuinely curious, because it seems odd. It seems like an odd way to try and distinguish yourself from him, to do something that many people would say is one of his worst flaws. So in that vein, and I think as I did it, I got a little bit better at it. I got a little bit more able to stay true to the learning and trying to empathize and understand, which is naturally hard to do on social media. And I would imagine, much like these videos, there's some degree of consistency in it, right? When you start something like this, firstly, you're not going to get much of a response, at all. But you also have to kind of prove how you think and who you are a little bit, right? It's natural for the human mind to want to put everybody into a category, in a box. So I found myself very cognizant of, if 3 of my posts or, comments, whatever, were towards somebody or people that tend to lean more left or more liberal, maybe I should even that out. Because if somebody just looks right now, they might just think I'm a conservative and I'm just, attacking liberals. I don't want to think that way, but it's just the reality of it. So I think you have to build up a little bit of credibility. I think these videos hopefully help to do that a little bit, but even on Twitter, I think you need to build a little bit of that up. But probably, I've said this in a prior video, you have to take like the long-term view on a short-term horizon. Even in these one-off interactions on Twitter, you have to be very thoughtful and word them in such a way in which you seem like you are thinking big picture and long term. You can't just get sucked into that specific moment, that specific discussion, that specific thread, and not be thinking about what it means in the longer term, not be thinking about how does this all fit into an overall objective, which is trying to drive better conversations, or getting people to think more about their views, or question a little bit more, or perhaps have a little more empathy for people that they normally would say are evil, or they hate those people, getting them to think like, hey, maybe there's some truth to their side that you may not agree with, but it doesn't make them evil. You have to be on, I think, to do that. And it's going to be a learning curve for me, I'm sure. I don't think I'm anywhere near there yet, but I am curious to see how it continues to play out. And I think, I'm hopeful that I can stay kind of active and avoid some of the pitfalls I spoke about, and hopefully use it to learn more about people, gather more input, and then my ultimate goal would be, hopefully through that, start to build some relationships or what have you, to where I can have more in-depth kind of long-form conversations with people. Probably will take some time to get there, but you have to start somewhere.